Cool. So we are going to do some review on Toy Tale. I think some of y'all have worked on it. Some of you haven't gotten to it yet. Some of you have been struggling with it. So let's take a look. So I'm going to just go ahead. Well, first of all, before I jump into it, what kinds of things on Toy Tale have you been struggling with or seem difficult for you still? Yeah, go for it.
The um the patch method, or the patch part of the lab.
Mhm.
I got it working. I got the light counter working using some help from a resource that Christian provided,
Mhm.
but it's not so solid that I'm confident I could do it off the top of my head. It's
Oh my
so
god. Oh. Oh.
You agree. Strong agree.
yeah. So yeah, I'm not confident I could do that. Not confident enough that I could do that without trouble.
Cool.
The like button.
Yeah, it looks like people are still struggling with post stuff too. So cool. What other parts we're looking at aside from just like everything? Good so far. Awesome. So what I think I'll do, I will kind of, like I said in the stand up, I'm just going to burn through the first part, which means doing the get, grabbing the stuff, putting it on the page, and then we'll look at hooking that stuff up. For sure. Indeed, indeed. Let me go ahead and pull this over here so we can look at it. Great. And close that out. So hopefully it doesn't go up with there. And great. I will share my screen. Oh no. I hear that, man. I'm at the age where, like, oh, I sneezed and now I can't move my back for 2 days. Super good time.
The last like 3 times I've hurt my back, it's been from the most dangerous thing ever, sleeping.
Sleeping. Yep.
Yeah.
Right there with you. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Everything all set up. Great. Oops. Let me get the floating meeting controls gone. And great. So this is Toy Tale. I will save this is part of an anecdote for later. So Toy Tale is, Toy Story. We are going to be grabbing a list of these toys from an API that is mocked using a JServer. It's not mocked, it's an actual API. I don't know why they say that. And render each of them to a card on the page. We're going to hook up this form up top, which is, I can't scroll up because it's a GIF, which is a little bit awkwardly set up, but works. And so we're going to hook that up when the form is submitted. It'll add a new toy for the database. That'll be our post thing that we're looking at. And we're going to hook up that like button. So you click on the button and it's going to update the database with a patch. And then that information is going to be rendered out to the DOM, just like it says there. There's no tests. So that's cool. That's cool. We'll make it work. So first thing I want to do is start up our server, make sure that all works, and we will be good. What the fuck? They're doing something terrible to trees outside. It's a nightmare sound out there. Cool. So let's take a look at what we have so far. So that's the DOM, the event, add event listener to the DOM content loaded that sets up the button. I'm going to fuss with this for just a second to make this a little bit better. Where is our, oh, okay. This is showing its age. So cool. I'm going to put the script link up here. I'm going to put a defer in it, and I'm going to pull this out here because that's unnecessary in this year of our Lord 2023. Cool. So I'm just gonna pop up in this thing here, and I think I'm gonna do it with light server again, just so it doesn't auto reload. I'm going to turn on the JSON server first this time, make sure it's all legit. So JSON server, DB JSON, bloop. So now we have our URLs here. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. So here's the URL that we're looking, or the API that we're looking at. This is our get for all of the toys, gives us an array of toys with IDs, names, images, and likes. That's what we'll be grabbing, adding, and manipulating as we go forward. Cool. And I'm also going to set up a little light server here. Boop. Hopefully that should run on site can't be reached. Cool. Right.
Sorry, what's a light server?
Light server is just a really simple little web server that serves up whatever page is in the current directory and automatically refreshes it. So we can. I'll do it the way that that y'all are probably doing it. I'm just gonna open index HTML. Cool. So here's our thing. Now this won't do auto refresh like we do, but we can hit refresh manually, and it's not a big problem. Yeah, I like to have.
Is there a reason you don't use live server?
With the JSON server, you have to set it up a little bit differently, just because it's a server that runs off a port. I generally like using tools that make the cycle faster, because my process is at least write some code, see how many bugs it has, fix the bugs, refresh, and so on. Anything that makes that cycle easier for me is good. That's why I have autosave on VS Code on window unfocus, because that means I can just type my code and switch over and it's saved automatically. Because that has caused unlimited problems for me in the past. That said, let's look at what we have here. That is already hooked up there, so we're not going to worry about that yet. What we want to do is cool. That's all for the toy button stuff. So is there a good way to hide that? Yeah. So cool. Let add toy equal false. Okay, this is all for that part. So let's start with first part. If there's any, I'm going to go fast through this part. If there's anything in here that does not make sense to you, please do not hesitate to stop me and ask a question. So here's our API here. We want to do a get to toys, and we're going to get all this information and put it on the page. And I think we already have, do we have cards? I don't think we have cards out. This is what a card would look like. So we'll get to that after we get our data. And I'm going to also pop up in a console in here with Option Command J, so we can do some debugging or logging at least. So first off, we're going to do our fetch. I'm going to set there's a few different ways to do this. I'm going to ignore, I'm going to put a just line in the sand right here. I'm going to set a URL. I'm going to call it toys URL, toys API. So fussy, picky. So that is the API we're going to be hitting. I'm going to fetch that toys API, and I'll do our little JSON dance. I'm just going to console log this out here. So very first thing, I'm just going to say, hey, going to do our fetch, going to look at the JSON, you see what it is. And let's reload this. Cool. It looks like we have 8 toys here. Perfect. We have cards here. There are a few ways to do this, and I'm going to do it the quick and dirty way. So let's write I'm just going to actually plop this down here so we can look at it as we're writing. So instead of console logging, I want to render the toys out to the page. I'm going to make a function called render toys. It's not going to take anything yet. And right now, well, we'll call toys. It will. This will be a list of toys. And right now, I'm just going to have a console log out. Toys, so I know that it's working. Great, that's working great. So now I'm going to take my toys and for each through them. Each toy, I want to, I'm just going to render that toy. Like that. And I can actually shortcut that by saying render toy. So that's going to pass the current toy into that function, which is going to be defined here. And again, you don't have to do it like this. There are many, many ways to do it. This is a way that I like to do it for now. So one more time, I'm just going to console log the toy. And this should be slightly different because it's rendering each one at a time instead of the whole array. So we should see it look a little different. There we go. So we have each toy rendered out nicely there. ID, image, likes, and name. Cool. So what I want to do is look at our HTML file, see where we're going to put stuff, not in the toy form. It's going to be in the toy collection. So I'm going to grab this lovely ID here. And I think right now I'm going to put it in a constant. We'll see what that looks like. I'm not going to decide what to call it yet. It's just going to be our document get element by ID. Why is everyone get element by ID? Blam, like that. And I'll call it toy collection element div element. Cool. A little bit wordy, but it tells us exactly what it is. So I want to here, when I render a toy, I want to create a new card div. I want to put the stuff inside of it, and I want to add it to the toy collection element. So the verbose way to do this would be create the div, add the class card to the div, create the H2, add the name to the H2, create the image, add the source and the class to that image in separate lines, create the paragraph, put the likes in there, create the button, do all that stuff there. Good time. That's a lot of lines. There are ways we can make that faster. I'm going to do it this way, which I don't necessarily recommend, but it works. So I'm going to say, let's see, we'll create a new element. So we'll say toy card equals create element div. Great. So we've got a div. We are going to have to put the class on there. So to add a class, we want to class list, and we want to add, and we're just going to add card to that class list. So there's our basic stuff there. And now here's where we would be creating all these elements and adding them to it. Instead of doing that, I'm going to not necessarily cheat, but I'm going to say toy card inner HTML is this stuff here. And this stuff here is going to be H2, and that's going to have a name. And this is going to be toy.name, I think. Now we can fix it post. We're going to do an image. Toy.image URL. I'm just going to put image right now. I'll look it up in a moment. Class equals toy avatar. Could just copy paste this instead of typing it out, but we're halfway through. This is going to have a number of likes. And you know what? I'm going to put the button in programmatically because we need to add an event listener to that. So I am also going to add the button here. And it's going to be like button. ID. Great.
Your string of button is a little off.
Bututun.
Yeah.
Bututun. Let's see. We want to set an inner text here, or text content. To like heart emoji. Or that's not an emoji. That's Unicode. And we want to create an event listener. I'm just going to put a dummy event listener on there for now. And we're going to listen for a click. And it's just going to Cool. And now that we've got this all juiced up with our content here, I'm going to append it to our toy collection element. Oh, and I also have to append our button. All right. If all that
Can you not append in the same? Oh, I just did it slightly different. I only have one append, and I just threw everything that I made into it. But I think this method is different than that.
Yeah. So this one, I'm creating the button and appending to the card.
Yeah.
I need to append the card to the thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. So we don't need this anymore. Let's see if all that typey actually did what I wanted it to do. It's potato head. Wow, I got all the parameters right too. Cool. So here's our cards. That is a way to do it. There are other ways to do it that are equally good as long as it works and does the thing you want. Totally fine. The way that you are taught to do it probably is create your H2, add the stuff to the H2, append the H2, create the image, add the stuff to the image, append the image, create the P, add the P, add the stuff to the P. That works totally fine too. No reason not to. I would probably write a little function that created an element that took like the kind of element and whatever related stuff and then added it to the toy card. Again, a dozen ways to do it. Do it how you like. So that is our first requirement settled here. We fetched the toys. We added the info to the card, and we threw that toy onto the list. Yeah, add the list of toys from the API and render each of them into a card on the page. Before we move forward, any questions about how any of this at all works?
Is inner HTML the way you're doing it with toycard.inner HTML, and then you set you're essentially, interpolating so that you can create the div at the same time that you're giving it the data from the API?
Yeah, creating the contents of the div. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Is that because you're using inner HTML? It's basically creating. Or that's not creating an object at all, right? That's just sticking those data things in, and then you're just putting that in the card.
Yeah. So I'm
As
creating.
opposed to populating each one of those things as a created element.
Yeah, exactly. I'm creating the card itself, and then when I set the inner HTML like this, it goes through it and does all that stuff for you. So those are still added to the DOM, and you can still access them like any other DOM element. It's just a shorter way to do it. People will argue that one way is more efficient or not than the other, but again, efficiency is rule 3. Let's get it working first, and then if we're worried about it being too slow, we'll profile it and figure that out. But for right now, this is
Interesting. Okay. Just curious, and this isn't any more susceptible to breaking really at all.
No.
I can't imagine.
because you're putting the same information in.
Right.
If someone wanted to attack this, they would have to attack the database first, in which case you got bigger problems.
Way bigger problems. Okay. Cool.
Cool. Any other questions?
From line 33 to line 36.
Mhm.
If I do it like that in a code challenge, am I still gonna pass?
Oh yeah. If it works, it works.
Oh,
100%.
I thought, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do this in production code sometimes. It's a totally legitimate way to do stuff.
Okay.
Also,
Also,
go ahead. Sorry.
instead of toy card dot class list, can we use class name over there?
You can. So here's why I prefer this way. Again, both ways work as long as it works. Totally fine. I tend to default to the class list because often you're going to have more than one class on there. So that lets you, add more than one class if you need it, which you often will, especially when you start using frameworks and stuff. It also lets me pull off one of the classes if I want to without changing the other ones. So if I have, it's a card and it has the class of hidden, right? I can add or remove that hidden class without having to worry about changing the card. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. You can add it the other way, but then you're really stuck with one.
Okay, so class list is the easiest way to do it.
Class list is the more flexible way to do it. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Michael, did you have a question?
I'll wait till the end. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Anything else for this part? Awesome. Let's move on to the harder stuff. Not necessarily harder, the next stuff. So, I want to rewrite this so bad. It itches so bad. I want to rewrite that, but I'm not going to because that's not what we're working on. We are working on hooking up the form that enables users to add new toys. So here we have a form. Where's the form? Where's the form? There it is. So we have a form called add toy form. Let's grab that form and we will put it up here. We'll put it here again. This is our code. Add toy. What's it? I have a short-term memory of a squirrel. Add toy form. Great. Cool. So now we have that form. It's got an ID, so we grabbed it by the ID. So what do we have here? We have 3 inputs. We have a name, an image, and a submit. We'll create the ID later on.
You said grabbed it by the ID, but that's the class.
Oh, look at that. There we go. All fixed. So that is an example of a terrible way to do that, because that form is going to be unique. There's not going to be a bunch of forms that look like that. If there were a bunch of forms, we would want to have an ID of form, and then what I bet if we look at it right now, I bet they styled it with that too. So if we look at this, oh, it's fine. It's fine. Why would they have that? I don't know. So we would have a class, and it's no problem to have, that is totally legit. And I do that all the time because the ID is for grabbing it. The class is for styling it. If you're selecting something by class and there's only one of them, you better have a really good reason. Again, it'll work, but anything outside of a little toy example like this is going to cause problems before too long. So again, not a hard and fast rule. If it works the other way, do what you like. Through difficult experience, I've discovered that this is a really good way to do it. Definitely saves future Mark some trouble. But yeah, if the other way works for you, great. You just have to do a query selector for or get on up by class or whichever you like. Thanks for pointing that out. It's really good point. Cool. So we have name, image, and we are going to do this. So we need to add an event listener. We have a submit button here, which I swear 50% of the time I want to add an event listener on that submit button. But instead, we want to add an event listener on the form itself, because the form is actually the thing that throws the event. The button's just the thing that tells the form to submit it. You can also, one of the advantages of doing this, instead of just putting a button on there and then grabbing the form by ID and whatever, you can also submit the form by hitting return in one of the text fields. So that's why if there's an event listener on the button, that's the wrong place. The event listener is listening to the form. So let's do that. And I'm just going to add the event listener right up here. Anti-form event listener. It's going to be a submit. And I'm just going to say, what is it? It's going to be add new toy, right? Add new toy, which we don't have yet. So let's add it down here somewhere. Flip, flip, flip. Cool. And an event listener needs to take what as an argument?
Callback function.
Add event listener needs to take a callback function, which we've got here. The callback function itself, what do we need to put a argument for there? Parameter there for there.
Event.
The event.
The event, yes. We can call it event. I'll call it event here. I usually just go with E, but this is clearer. So, and it tells us it's listening for an event. So right now I'm just going to log out some stuff. So we have the event. How do we get access to the form element?
Target.
Yes, exactly. So event target is always the DOM element that threw the event. So if it's a click on a button, it's going to be the button. If it's a mouse over on an image, it's going to be the image. If it's a form, it's going to be the form itself. So that, I think that takes a while to figure out. Sometimes it's feels a little bit magic sometimes until you actually need to do it. The target is just the thing that threw the event. So we have the form with event target, and we want to look at a couple of things, specifically image and name. So since these have these names here, name is name, name is image, we can access those by that name. So we can do this, and let's just console log these. Event target, whoopsie. Event target image. Cool. So two things we need to change about this function to make it do what we want. What's the first thing we want to do on a submit event to keep it on the same page?
Prevent default.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, well, inside the console log, we don't need a value. We don't need to add a value to the name and the image.
Yep, that was the second thing. So
okay.
if we look at it right now, and you know what, just to prevent us from having to click that button all the time, there we go. Now it's going to start open, right? Come on, man. Display equals block. Display equals none. Oh, buddy.
I think they may have done that in CSS.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do this here right after that. Cool. Great. And we can still turn it off and on here. So what I did was just say add toy is true, which is showing the thing. It's going to show up normally, so we don't have to hit that button every time we want to test it. So right now, toy image create toy, we can click the button, or I should be able to hit return since it's a submit event. Hey, look at that. And it is logging out the element. So it's logging out that first text field and it's logging out that second text field. Exactly right. We do need to add the value here. So now if we do this, reload, add a new toy. Nope, I hate that button so much. There we go. There's our values. So here's the part where we want to send a post and we want to use those two values. You know what? I had a what's her name? What's the lady Woody's name? Josie, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Josie.
It is Jesse. Which I
Jesse.
know because I typed it out about 100 times trying to get this thing to work last night.
Cool. I'm gonna just grab an image. This one looks great. Let's get the Amazon one. Hello, buddy. Okay, nope, I don't want to click that. I'm not buying it. Don't put it in my shopping cart. copy image address is what I want. And I'm just gonna paste this. Great. So Jesse, so that's what I want to look for here. Boom. So we're grabbing Jesse and that image. So let's do our post. We're still posting to toys. So the API URL is not going to change. We need to do another fetch here, right? So I'm just going to grab these into constants right now. Awesome. So we have the name and value. How about image? Name and image here. So now let's look at our post. And here, holler as soon as you see something that doesn't make sense to you. So I'm going to do a fetch. I'm going to fetch to the toys API. Since it's not a get, we need to add this options array. So the first thing we need to do is tell it what method, what HTTP method we're going to do. And that method is post. In RESTful HTTP, a get means, a get is a read, a post is a write, a patch or a put sometimes is an update, and delete is delete. So we have those four major actions. There's a subtle difference between patch and put. Patch is you're changing part of a data item. Put is you're replacing the whole item. Semantics are important, but for right now, we're not going to worry about it. Patch is what we want. So what other things do we need to put in these options?
Your header
Mm-hmm. Got that right.
and your body.
Headers and body. So headers is going to be an object. Our body is going to be something. Nope, it's not going to be that. Cool. So our headers are obnoxious, and I'm going to copy paste them from the README if they're there. There we go. So, and in fact, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to make it a constant. Is it header or headers? It's headers, right? Headers. I'm going to call it headers, and I'm going to make it this object. So now I have an object that is that header stuff, and I can just use that object here instead of writing it out every time. And I'm doing that because I know there's a patch coming up. Otherwise, I would write it here and then refactor it out. So here's the shortcut thing that we usually don't get into until phase 2, but it's just plain old JavaScript. So we're going to talk about it right here. So this is totally fine. This works. Headers. The key headers has the value of whatever is in the variable headers. Since they are named the same, JavaScript lets us just do this. Boom. So anytime the key and a variable name that has the value that we want are the same, we can just write the thing. So we can just write headers, and that is the same as headers. It's a little shortcut. The other way works totally fine. If it's confusing, don't worry about it. You will definitely see that shortcut in the future, though, in other people's code. Absolutely. So, let's just do the same thing with the body and figure out what the body looks like. What does our body look like?
I'm pretty sure I don't know, and that's exactly where I'm stuck in this post.
Excellent. So we want to pass it information about the new toy, and our toy data looks like this. So we're not getting likes from our form. I bet they tell you explicitly to set it to 0. Yeah. Oh, cool. Look at this. This is what our body object looks like. So it's just going to be an object that has the name, the image, and starts off with 0 likes. And importantly, it needs HTTP is a string-based protocol, so everything sent back and forth is just a string, which means we can't send JavaScript objects as a body. It doesn't know what to do with that. In fact, if we do that, it will get like less than object, a lot of hex numbers greater than, and it'll not know what to do with that. So we always need to stringify our body, unless you're using Axios, which is a different library. But for regular old fetch, we need to always stringify our body. So our body is going to look like this. I'm going to stringify it, JSON stringify, and this is going to be our object here. So we have a name. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Okay, let's do this. Name is new toy name. Nope, new toy name. Image is new toy image. Likes is going to be 0. And I think that's all we need. Am I telling the truth? Looks like I am. I'm going to refactor here just a little bit. I'm going to call new toy name. I'm going to call new toy image. And now what can we do?
Shorten down your
Yeah, we can make it look like this. So that is exactly the same as doing this. This probably makes more sense to you right now. I'm going to keep it like this because this is something that you will often see. So, but yeah, know that name is just name colon name, image is just image colon image. That only works if they're named the same thing. If they're called new toy image, you have to call that out explicitly. So we have created our object for the new toy from the data in the form. We've added the likes there. We've stringified that object. And since we're calling it body, we can just say body. So I'm just going to do that there. So I think that's it. We have our headers that we defined up here. We have our body that we defined here. So we can just say headers and body, but otherwise headers colon the value, body colon the string of the object. And I think that's going to work for putting the thing there. Questions about this part? Again, we haven't tested it, so I might be lying. So if there's anything that you see that doesn't look right, give me a holler. Does the creating the body object / string make sense now?
I'm trying to, it makes sense looking at your code. I'm trying to see how the way I have it, because I got as far as I know the body needs to JSON.stringify, and then I couldn't figure out what to pass it, but I hadn't created constants that targeted anything.
Right.
So that the event listener is listening for the submit, your event target, and the name and value is coming from the form itself.
Yeah. So inputs have a name, whether it's text input or a drop down or whatever, and they're always going to have, or they should always have a name. And for vanilla JavaScript, they should always have a name. And whatever that name is, right now it's helpfully called name and image. Whatever those are, we can use as properties on the target object.
Okay, and then getting the value from that is just retrieving the value from the submission itself.
Exactly, yeah. So we have our form here. We're grabbing the form itself, the element. We are adding an event listener, put it up here, adding an event listener to that form. Yeah, I'll leave it like this for now. Adding an event listener to this form, which listens for the submit event, and that's going to call add new toy. Add new toy is taking the event as an argument or parameter, which way you want to think about it. And then we're pulling the values off of that and using that to fetch.
I see where I was confusing myself. I did create a constant called new toy equals, and I went event.target.data.
Yep.
And I was trying to plug data into the thing, so I think I see what I would. Yeah. Okay. All right. I see where I could easily change this and have that actually work.
Cool.
Cool.
Other questions or clarifications that folks would like?
For some reason, my prevent default isn't working. That might
Are
just be
you
a quirk
activating
with
it?
something.
Are you
Purposes.
so two gotchas we have sometimes? D is capitalized, and make sure we're calling it as a function.
These capitalize and make sure prevent. I don't know. It's fine. I'll refer to my other. I've already done it once, so I'll see what.
Yeah,
I probably just did
I
something
will.
wrong.
I will often have this problem exactly, and the debugging, learning how to debug this is more important than the actual answer. So the steps that and I think this is really where we start to see like this kind of thread pulling kind of debugging that we're going to have to do from now on. So we have a thing we want to work, prevent default, and it's not working. So the first thing I ask myself is like, do I understand how this works? Okay, I want to call it on the event that the form threw to keep that form from refreshing the page. Okay, I think I know that part. So, and there are so many points of failure that could happen here, right? If so, maybe what has happened, did you change it to an ID over here in the form?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So,
And on the HTML or no? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did that.
cool. So, my first question is, we only have one form here, but my first question would be like, am I getting the right form? Am I putting it on a different form? I think we only have one form here, so it's probably right. Here's my ID, making sure that's right. Add -toy -form. So make sure I'm grabbing the right element in my code, and add -toy.form looks like I'm grabbing the right one. I'm getting it by ID and not by class. I'm getting it from the document and putting it in this add toy form. I am adding an event listener, making sure I'm spelling submit right, because for some reason the event type is a string instead of a constant, which would be Windows error prone. But I've spelled submit wrong. I mean, you saw me spell button wrong before. Like, I've definitely done this and then spent 2 hours trying to figure out why my function wasn't working. Just spending all my debugging time down here trying to figure out what it is when it was like a simple typo here. And it's not going to tell you that that's wrong anywhere. Like, it's not going to error check that. This is something that you have to do visually. So making sure that I am getting a submit, making sure that it is calling the add new toy function here, which it looks like it is, making sure the add new toy function is looking for an event, and that we are calling prevent default on that event. And again, many times I've done this, which just says the function and does not call the function. It's just saying the function. And so we would need to make sure to call that function on that event handler. I don't think it matters where in that function that occurs. I put it at the top just so I don't forget it, which I often do or have often done, as long as you have it before the function ends. But I think that's where our thread pulling ends. So if it's still not working, one of those things is probably not hooked up right.
Yep, it was getting the element. I found something about how I was grabbing the element wasn't right.
Cool.
So, yep.
Yeah. And this is the kind of debugging that this is the kind of debugging that we're going to be seeing a lot, because from now on it's going to be this complex or more probably. So understanding the effect, understanding where that thread starts, and that thread starts here, right? Finding out where that thread starts and then just pulling it all the way through, because we know it goes from ID to JavaScript element to all the way down to putting the parentheses on that. And so just pulling that thread through all like different files and functions and passing stuff through. this works. We know it works. We know that there's not a bug with prevent default. Very, very probably. So we know that, and this is the number one thing that I think most programmers have such a hard time learning. It's always your fault. It's always your fault. And like I mean, you know what programmers are like. There can be a lot of ego tied up in stuff, and especially in newer programmers, it's always the computer's not working, or my function isn't working. The computer's broken. My function's broken. And although like I'm easy when people are learning, the correction I always want to make for starters is not the function's not working. You want to say I did something wrong. I wrote the function wrong, or I wrote the way the function is called wrong. And just like literally, I think that's 90% of the problem is saying something else must be broken when it's always our fault. Once you make 10,000 mistakes, you start to believe it. And it's literally just a matter of tracing through everything and finding the one dumb little error you made, the one typo in submit or button or whatever. So your error message won't lie to you. The built-in JavaScript stuff is more than likely working. It's just a matter of tracing through the stuff and finding out where you went wrong. And that ends the pep talk. So any other questions here before we see if it actually works and then handle what happens after?
Mine is still not functioning, but I'm wondering, did I forget, does the body need to be, do you need to make a object the same way you do with the header?
So the body needs to be a string. So you're making an object out of that, and then you need to stringify that object.
So it is the body's in an object.
So the
Oh, I have that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the body itself is in the object that you're using in fetch here. The value of the body is going to be that string made from the object, the data object.
I don't know. I'll have somebody look at it today.
Cool. Well, we have not tested this, so there's a possibility that it's not right. So let's take a look. Here's our database JSON. It has the 8 elements of Wu-Tang, and we're going to give this a shot here. So I'm just going to copy this one more time. Going to reload. And so nothing here, nothing there. Jesse, create the toy. So it reloaded. Did I do something wrong? Let's see. It looks like it reloaded, right?
Time to start pulling them threads.
Start pulling those threads. Did I do everything right? Let me try it one more time just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Okay, cool. It is reloading. It looks like it's definitely reloading. So let's look at our database. It looks like it didn't do anything to the database. Cool. So where did I go wrong? What did I do? So I just traced through all that stuff. It feels like it looked right. So I'm going to start putting some console logs in here to see where I went wrong. First off, I'm going to put one up here. And this one is one that might flash by. So I'm just going to keyboard cat this whole thing here. See if there's something we can see. Afterwards, I'm going to console log the name and the image. And I'm going to console log the fetch. And that's going to log out the promise that is returned by the fetch. So knowing what I know about what happened wrong, I expect to see this flash on the screen and then nothing else. I mean, it'll show the stuff that happens when it reloads. So let's see. I'm just going to put in garbage here because it doesn't matter. Let me reload that. Garbage. And so I should see a flash of that big string here and then nothing. Yep, that's what it looks like. In fact, I didn't even see that. Oh, wait, I'm not even seeing that flash reloading. So maybe it's not hooked up to the thing, right? So how can I debug this? Add new toy. Is that the name of that? It looks like it is. Who can see the error?
Submit spelled wrong.
It sure is. Boom. Cool. I have a good feeling that this will work. 95%. Hey, awesome. So here's our keyboard cat. Here's the value of the stuff we're doing, and here is the promise that I believe has been fulfilled. If we look at our database, Jesse's in there now. No likes. And here's the thing, we didn't pass it an ID. When we created a new one, the database created an ID for us. We generally, and I guarantee everyone is going to do this, we generally, almost always, do not want to pass an ID into a post when we're creating it. We want to let the database create an ID for a lot of different reasons, but do your best not to pass an ID when you're doing a post. We will get that back. But as we see, Jesse's not showing up here, which means we need to do something with the return value here. So not the return value, the premise. So here's our fetch for the toys API post. We have a promise there, so we want to do something. So first off, we want to do our JSON dance. And I'm going to put the next then down here. What comes back from a post? Who knows? There's no way of telling. Let's so we know that's right there. Let's take a look at what comes back from a post and go from there. So let me reload this. Let me put Jesse back in. Jesse, create toy. Cool. So this is what is coming back from the post. Here, what's coming back is the thing that was created. And this is generally true. It's definitely true for JSON server. It's true for most data servers that you're going to do for basic API. So this lets us know, A, that it was created successfully in the database, and B, what it put in the database. So we have this nice object here. So here's a few things we can do. I'm going to do it the easy way first, and then we can talk about a different way to do it. So we have data here, and that data looks an awful lot like the toy that we're getting from our first data. Anyone have any thoughts about what the easiest thing to do would be to add that toy to the page?
Pass your render thing.
Yeah, we can render toy. So, this is basically saying, this is the same as this. So we're getting the toy back from the JSON stuff and we're passing it to render toy. But since this is just looking for a function, we can just pass it the render toy function, and it's going to take the data and pass it right here to render toy. And this will do the same thing. I'm going to take this off here. So this is going to do the same thing. It's going to take that data and use all the data in it to put it at the bottom of the list. So just let's go back and get all of our fake Jessies from the database here. Fantastic. So we're going to reload this. There should be no Jesse. Now there are 2 Jessies. Did I not save that? Let's try that again. There's no Jessies in the database though. Why are you rendering Jesse bases. Well, I don't like that. Oh, it's submitting. Is it submitting? Let's try this again. There's no Jessies. No Jessies. Okay. What? Cool. Let's see.
Obviously, your computer's broken.
Yeah, the computer's broken. The internet. Let's do this. I'm just going to log out. What's in render toys? What do we get back from render toys? Cool. Yeah, we get that back. Do I just have to restart the node server if I delete stuff manually? Yeah, okay. For some reason, it wasn't changing when I just edited the file. Good thing to know. Used to be able to do that. So I'm going to do the thing that I just talked about. Jesse, oop, I just put in G. There she is. There's G. So yeah, that made that post and it got the data back and it used that data to populate stuff on the page. That works. And I think I'm going to leave it doing this right now. In a real application, I would probably. So let me talk about this briefly, real briefly, and then we'll look at the patch. Yeah, okay, that'll work. What I would probably do is say, let toy list or something equal an empty array. And then when I get this back, instead of rendering toys, what I would probably do is say, take the toys, set toy list to the toys, and then render toys on the toy list. So that does exactly the same thing. The thing that's different is that now I have the data in a local data structure. So I can add Jesse to the front of this list if I wanted to. I could make that list in alphabetical order. I could do whatever I want and display that list. I could remove stuff from that list. Or if I remove something from the database, I can just grab the whole thing back and re-render the new thing. This is a pattern that you're going to see more in React in phase 2, state pattern. And they explicitly call it state there. This may or may not be useful coming up in the future for the code challenge or not. I'm not sure, but it is an option. So if you're having trouble thinking about how to manipulate data in place, think about instead storing that data in a global variable and just re-rendering the whole thing. We can talk about that more when it comes up. Aside from that, any questions about how we are adding Jesse to the database and putting her on the page?
I'm not sure how you're getting information to show up in your database because I currently just get ID 9 when I add something new.
Okay, cool. Let's look at what you're adding. So the body. So if I console log out the body here, body, if I can spell it right, I should be getting the string that represents our data here. So Jess, create toy. Maybe I should reload it. Jess 3. So here's the string that it is sending. And you can see it's a string because is it? Oh yeah, so it's sending that string out. If it was an object, it would look like this. It would be diggable. So we know this is a string that represents that object. If I didn't do that, let's take a look at what that looks like. If I take off the JSON stringify and just use the object, that will show us an object. Put this here. That. So, and that'll give a bad request because it's actually trying to send the actual object, not the JSON string representation of the object. Question, are you getting this bad request thing when you submit?
No, I'm getting an error file not found.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
File not found. What does it say what file it's looking for?
Yeah, it's the user is my name. It's going to the file directory and then going after practice tutorial it goes /undefined.
So let's think about what we have here. Do you are you getting it with the toys API like that?
Yes. Well, I'm using localhost toys. Yeah.
Localhost without the
3000 toys. Yeah.
Do you have the HTTP on the right?
Yes.
Okay. So the URL looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fetch the get works fine.
Yeah, the get works fine. So the toys that are existing in the database appear and they look fine. It's when I add new entries that's
Cool.
when it happens.
So you're fetching to the toys API again, just the same there.
Mhm.
Your method is post.
Yes.
Are you passing the headers and the body the way we're doing here?
I have headers hard coded.
That's fine.
And my body is just JSON stringify, and then I made a constant called toy1, which is just like, you know, the name is event target name value, like 0 image event target image value, and that's set up that way.
And if you log out the body, do you get what you expect?
Where would I?
So if you put a console log here, say, so after you create the body string, you can console log it out. And then when you submit the form, it should log that out the way you want it, you know, without the, it'll show it as a string, not as an object that you can dive into.
Okay. I don't have add new toy. I don't know. My fetch function is a different function. It's
okay.
annoying to make. Should I just add the fetch to my sort of submission function?
Yeah, so so what you're saying, it sounds like it might be trying to post to not the server, but something that doesn't exist. I'm curious. I would have to see what your code looks like.
Okay.
One thing that you can do to check it out, if we go to the network tab here in the developer console, this tells you all of the requests that it's trying to make. And so here's a toys request that works. It gives us a 204. The response, why aren't you giving me the response? Did I do it wrong here? So it should be right now. Let me see if I can do this here. Let me clear this out just to make it clear. Jazz, HTTP, whatever. Submit. Cool. So this is sending us the right. So this is the request that it is getting here, the response that's getting here, preview. Great. So we can see in the headers, these are the headers that the HTTP request is sending. It's sending it as a post, it's sending it to this URL. And those are the most important parts. The payload, this is the body, and we can tell this is an object because we can dig into it. And then the preview of what's coming back gives us the JSON that's coming back. And here's the actual response. So these all should look relatively same when you look at it this way. And it's the 201 response there. If the URL is something different than what you expect, that might be the problem. It's trying to hit like a file somehow that doesn't exist. It'll do that sometimes if everything's not exactly right. So I would suggest looking through your headers, making sure everything else looks like what you expect. And if especially your headers don't look right, that's where that'll tell you where to start looking in your code.
So I kind of figured this out on the spot. So when I first create the submission, it works, it'll add it. And then I refresh the page, that new submission is broken because it didn't actually add it to the JSON file. It just added an ID 9.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's not getting the data that you think it's getting. So yeah, my suggestion would be to put some console logs in and make sure at every step, everything is what you think it is up to the point where you send it.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this can be a pain to debug for sure. There's a lot of moving pieces. Other questions before we take a look at the patch? We're a little bit over time, but this is good stuff. Cool. So yeah, here we go. Again, there's a few different ways to do this. The way that I like to do it is getting all the data in one place and re-rendering it all at once, which is what you're going to see in React. But let's do it the kind of quick and dirty way. So when a user clicks on a toys like button, 2 things should happen. So right now what happens is it just says like. Awesome. We're not going to need the add new toy anymore because we have too many Jessies. That's whatever. pulse that and get rid of that. Cool. No more new toys. So right now we have our, where is it? Here is our like. So I think what I'd like to do, I'm going to write a function inline here. And I'll tell you why in just a second while we're doing it. So we could make another function and pass it in. There's a few different ways to do this. I'm going to do it in line first, and then I'll show you how to refactor it. So this is going to have a couple things in it. So I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to console log again here. And like to ID, toy ID. So, and if I do that right, cool. So what did I do wrong there? Cool. So now when I click a like button, it should say which one I'm clicking. And the reason it can do that is this is a Scopy thing. And that may be what I think it was. I forget who it was who mentioned it earlier. This is a thing that you can play with. Because we're creating this function in the scope of this function, toy ID, which we're getting in as an argument to this function, this is a reference to some data. As long as something is using that reference, that data is going to stay alive. So since we're console logging it here, and especially since we're adding it to the like button, as long as something's referring to it, that's going to be a thing that we can play with, especially our function here. Misspoke slightly, but it's essentially the same. So when we create a handler function inside another function, we can get access to the data inside that function and hold on to it. So no matter how many buttons we add, we can still say, when you click this button, use the ID from inside this function. There might be 100 other ones, but we only care about the one that we are in. This is a relatively new thing that is easy to do in JavaScript at like 7 years ago. You used to have to do a lot of different fuckery to make it work. This is relatively straightforward and easier to understand than the old way. Still a little bit confusing. If we wanted to just pass it a function like add like or whatever, we would need to somehow tell it what ID to work with. And that would probably be like this, add like toy ID. So then it would have that reference to the toy ID. This is a little bit heady right now. I recommend just doing these functions in line, and I'll refactor it to the other way so you can see both ways. Short version is we're going to need to do another fetch. So we're going to do a fetch to our API. We're going to give it an object, and this time the method is going to be patch. Since we have our headers defined, we can just write headers. And now we need a body. So what is our body going to look like? When we're doing a patch, I lied about the URL. When we're doing a patch, we need to do two things. We need to tell it which thing we're changing and what part of it we're changing. And let's look at the API doc here that says, here we go. We need to patch to our URL and tell it what ID we're working with. So that would look like this, but in this case, I'm just gonna make it one of these jobbies here. Whoops, and say toy ID. So again, in this event handler is a fetch call. That fetch call has that ID to work with until that element goes away because it's holding on to that reference there. So we're making a fetch to our API / the ID of the toy, which we are getting from the toy. And this is important that we're using this function to render out our new things because then it's going to do all this stuff for us for the new ones with the new ID and all that. So what do we need to send along with it? We just need to increase the number of likes. Fantastic. I'm going to show you a way that might not work at first, but that may seem like a way you want to do it. So first of all, we want the body to be likes, the new number of likes. Here's our object. That's going to be likes. And so right now we want to say toy likes +1. Yeah, I think that works. So, if we're looking at Woody, he has 5 likes now. The body should say, hey, set likes to 6. Here's the thing that is gonna mess up. Well, let's look at how it behaves, and then we'll talk about how it's gonna mess up and how we're gonna fix it. So after we do this, we're going to need to update the thing on the page. So what we need to do is do our then. And do our then here. I'm just going to console log out what we get back so you can see. Cool. I'm going to click Woody here. Access the fetch from origin acknowledgement blocked by CORS policy. What? Is that true? Is that true? File. It's trying to patch the file. Ah, look at that. Look at that. Patch file. Whoa, why would it do? Let me take a look at this. This might be related to the problem you're having. So I'm going to say our, let's call it the patch API or patch URL. And I'm just going to put this here. Oh, you know what I did? I see the error already. Who can say what I did?
You need to string interpolate the toys API.
You got that right. Okay, cool. So it was looking for the string toys API /that, which is not a thing that exists. Cool. So let's reload that and let's see what happens here. Great. So we added like to 1 Woody, and this is what we get back. Likes 6. So we know what we want to do here. We want to update this number here, 5, to the number that we got back, 6. And we have that. So here's the thing. Right now, let me take a step back actually. And you're going to hear this more on server side, but it exists everywhere. There's a pattern called model view controller, MVC. And basically it is a way to separate the 3 kind of big parts of an application. The model is the data that we're working with. That should be kind of independent of the other 2. The view is the way we are looking at that data. So you can have multiple views for some data. You can have a web page and a counter somewhere. The view is separate, but shows us what is in the model. And the controller is basically the verbs, the things that operate on the model. And when the model updates, we update the view. And those are controlled from the view. So our button is in the view. We click the button that activates a controller that updates our model that updates the view again. Right now, this data here only exists in the HTML page. Gross. Which means our model and view are not separate. They are combined. Gross. So if we update, if we grab the toy card that he's in and grab the paragraph in there, and we're going to have to use a query selector to get all that stuff. And then we need to update it to the number space likes. When we do that, that data only exists in the HTML, which is not a place we want to keep data. Because if we hit likes again, it's going to look at the original toy data, which we don't have access to right-wise. Do we? Is that true? I don't know. It is. It's not true. Basically, we need to do some gross things to get around it. We could, when it comes back, we can, since we have access to this toy, we can say toy likes equals toy likes plus equals 1. So we can manipulate the data that is attached to this element, which is kind of setting the model, I guess. We would also have to re-render it from in here. It's kind of gross. And this is kind of where we go back to the way, I'm not going to type it out because it's kind of nasty code. What I would like to do ideally is keep our data outside here. So our model is just going to be a variable that hangs out up here. It's going to look like this. Toy list, toy model. That's great. So this is just saying, hey, there's going to be a variable called toy model. And this doesn't affect anything, but just to give the reader a hint what it might be, we're going to make it an empty array. So I'm going to pre-factor this. I'm going to rework this so it works better without getting it to work first. So render toy is great. That works fine. Render toys. I don't think render toys is going to take an argument anymore. I think render toys is always going to work on toy model. So anytime I say render toys, it's going to render all the toys out. So what that's going to do is every time it renders all the toys out, it's going to keep adding stuff to the page. So the very first thing I'd like to do is get rid of it, get rid of what's there. And right now there's the toy collection element. There's a bunch of different ways to clear it out. I'm just going to say set inner, inner HTML. I'm just saying inner HTML is nothing. So what this is going to do, what we call render toys, it's going to clear out that element and then re-render everything that is in toy model. Seems inefficient. Maybe it is. At this point, we don't care about that. We'll work on that later. So here is where I need to do an extra step. I'm calling render toys, but I need to set the toy model first. And this is where we're going to do this. So, and this feels like extra steps, and it is a little bit. If you can get it working the other way, that's fine. That'll pass the code challenge. This will help you think about things as you build on stuff. So we have our model now that is independent of our view. We have a method to change or to re-render stuff when the toy model changes. So all we need to do now is, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write one more function. And that function is going to be, what's going to be? It's going to be the update toy model. And this is going to take a new list of toys, and it's just going to say toy model equals toys, and it's going to call the render toys in here. So anytime we update toys, it's automatically going to re-render them on the page, which means we can go back to update toy model here. This is going to get the toys from the data, pass it to update toy model. It's going to set whatever that list is to our global, and it's going to call the re-render. So if we use update toy model, we are guaranteed always that what we see on the page matches the data that we have. So I think this will do the initial render just fine. We do need to change this here because render toy is just going to add something on. It's not going to add the new Jesse to our list. So I'm going to instead call, so I'm going to take new toy here. I'm going to say update toy model, and I'm going to use some some list syntax that you may not have seen yet, but you'll be using a lot in React. So I'm going to use this spread operator. So basically I'm saying create a new array, spread operator is 3 dots. I'm going to say toy list, toy model. I mean, so this is saying create a new array with the contents of the toy model. And we're just going to throw the new toy in there. This is confusing new stuff that you haven't seen yet. If you're not following, don't worry about it. This is a way to do it. So hopefully that'll work. Maybe not. We'll test it when we get to it. So now we can look at here. So I'm going to use some list stuff that is a couple weeks ahead of what you are going to be using for React. We have a new toy here. We're getting toy likes. The only thing we want to update is the likes in one of the toys. So I'm going to say update toy model. And this is a little bit in the weeds, I think. Update toy model. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to spread out the current one model. So that's going to, no, you know what? Actually, I don't want to do that because I want to only update one thing in the toy model, which means that I want to pass it a new list that's exactly the same as the old one, except for one little piece changed. That sounds like a job from map to me. So I'm going to say toy model map. And what do I want to do here? So map is an array method that returns a copy of an array in which each element of the array is transformed in some way. So if the element does not match the one we're looking at, we just want to give it the same one back. So I'm actually going to write this as a function here. Toy map is going to take, let's look at each toy. And probably going to need parentheses or brackets here. Look at all these parentheses, like Lisp. So I want to take each toy and I want to check and see if the ID matches. So if the ID of toy, oh, I need to use a different thing here because we already have toy. If T ID matches toy ID, which is the thing that we're clicking the button on, then we're just going to return the toy. Oh, we're going to return T because that's what we have. Else, and there are better ways to do this too. I'm just doing it for clarity. Not that any of this is clear right now. Else, we want to return a new toy that looks exactly the same as the old toy, but with the ID incremented. So I'm going to return. I can use a spread operator in an object. So this is going to spread out the toy. And I'm just going to say the likes is t.likes plus 1. And in fact, I'm going to turn this into a ternary while we're here. Why not? And that means I can take the brackets off. So I'm just going to say TID equals that. T otherwise this thing here. Cool. I'm gonna get rid of some of these here. See how many we need to keep. Let's see which one that matches that. We need one more. Cool. So this should not be readable or understandable to pretty much anyone, I don't think. Until you get to React. You'll be seeing stuff like this in React a lot. Right now, this is me kind of indoctrinating you with React stuff before React. I don't think this is necessary. This is definitely not necessary for Code Challenge. Don't worry about that part. This is a way to think about the architecture of your application. In this case, it's just a page in a way that is easier to work with in the future. And if I had more time and I was working on this more slowly, I would definitely like build it out to where it would kind of work in the gross way that we're used to. Probably even select the text out of that thing, turn it into a number, increment it, and set it back, and then think about ways to make it better as needed. I just know that going forward, this kind of model is going to be more useful. That's a lot of big talk, though. Does it work? Let's find out. So it shows us all the stuff. Great. It shows us what's in the database. Let's add a new toy and see if that actually does what we think it does. How many Jessies do we have now? 4. Let's add a 5th if that works at all. That looks like that part works. Great. And if we like our little green man, oh no, it's all lies. It's all lies. What do we need to do? We need to debug this update toy model. Let's see that. Console toys. So we know that the adding one works. We know that the initial one works. Toys. Woody. Yep, Woody's not changing. I'm guessing it's in this janky map here. I've talked to y'all for a long time. I think it's just about time for lecture. So is it? Look at the calendar. Yep, lecture time. Okay, cool. I will fix this and I'll post this code along with the video. I've kind of gone into the weeds here. This is what programming looks like sometimes. Aside from this last bit, kind of went off. The patch is still doing what we want. It's just a matter of displaying it. Any quick questions before jumping into lecture?
On the code challenge, I set mine up to update it. I think it's kind of plunking into place almost. It's so I run the patch updates the server, and then I just used the same event function to just quickly tick up the number on the page that the user's looking at.
Yeah.
Does that work on the code challenge?
Oh yeah. I mean,
it just like pops that number up, and then you refresh the page and the number's updated.
Yeah.
And it updates it in the database. It just it's not like reloading the whole card with a new like total on it.
Yeah. That will work if you click the button once. We want it to work without reloading. So you would need some way to update that data.
It does update with it, but it's almost like I just kind of it seems kind of fudged. Like it updates both on server side and on client side, and then you refresh and it loads the new data from the server. But that would work, right? As long as it's updating when you click it and shows it to you, right?
So it should be able to update it more than once without refreshing.
Oh, more than once without refreshing.
Yeah.
Should just be able to click the likes over and over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And again, this is kind of the advanced React way kind of do it. Let's table that. And I can go through some ways. I don't know if I think there's one code challenge that has you do that. But I'll go through some simpler ways to do it. We can maybe look at it. Well, we'll look at it soon.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you, Mark.
Cool. Yeah. The essential idea is to keep that likes data in a place where you can update it so you can look at it again and update it again, one way or another. But that is definitely like an advanced thing for y'all to do right now. So yeah. Other questions? Awesome. I expect to see when I stop sharing a lot of glazed faces or no faces at all. Great. And 27 chats that I didn't see. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Jump into lecture. I will put this up there. Nobody I'll put the code up to in a repo. And thanks for sticking out, especially for that last bit. That was a lot of yammer yammer. I will catch up with my chat and talk to you in a little bit. Bye.